Morning. I'm back trying again on my quest for the perfect loaf. I started this journey a couple of years ago at 75, and I just keep trying for the perfect loaf. And one of the ones that seems to be in top contention is my croissant loaf. So this morning, let's go right to it. Okay, first of all, I'm using a clear glass bowl because I find those to be the best. Clear glass bowls, you can see the bubbles, you can see what's happening with your dough, whereas if you use one that you can't see through, you don't know what's actually happening on the dough, with the dough inside the bowl. So I've got my starter. Today we're doing something a little different. I usually use an active starter that has risen and then just fell a little bit, but this one has been in the refrigerator overnight. I didn't feel like mixing a dough last night, and that's what makes sourdough so great. It's flexible, it's forgiving, and it works different ways. So in this case, this one is straight from the refrigerator, and it still smells, it's still got that wonderful kind of a little bit of a floral smell. If it smells like acetone or vinegar, then you know you better feed it before you use it. But this one, I don't know if you can still see the bubbles, but there are still bubbles in it, and it's wonderful, even though it rose and fell yesterday. So for this recipe, I'm gonna use about 150 grams of starter. I would really like to try to get this bread baked today. It's for a neighbor. And I did use filtered water, and I did warm it for a minute. Okay, so that's about perfect. Now I will stir it up. So there's several loaves that I've made that I've loved, people have loved, some of the customers who buy my bread loved. One of the favorites is this croissant bread, because it does come like a croissant roll, very crusty and flaky and soft and just decadent. And a lot of people have loved this loaf, so it's one that I make often. I also made a bagel bread a few days ago and shared it with y'all, and that's another favorite. I do a cheddar jalapeno loaf, which people love, and a lot of my family members love that. So I do some sweetbreads like blueberry cream cheese. I'll do some videos on some of those as well. And I do focaccia, which I'll have to share with you guys one day. And focaccia is one that you can really make a lot of different flavors. I like the standard kind of garlic rosemary. That's my favorite. Okay, so I have mixed the water and the starter together, and you can see it makes a very milky looking liquid. I see some chunks of starter left, so I'm just going to try to dissolve those a little bit more. And once I get all that done, and like I said, again, you can see the milky liquid, and the glass bowl makes it so wonderful because you can really see if there's chunks when you're stirring it together. Now, I do add, not everyone does this, but I feel like my bread has a much better texture and crust when I add some extra virgin olive oil. This is my little decanter. I'll make sure to put a link in the comments so that if you wanted to get one of these, it works great. It's the amber glass, which keeps the olive oil very fresh. And it's also, you can spray it or you can pour it. So in this case, we're gonna pour it because I'm going to put about 12 grams of olive oil. Don't forget to tear. I have to remind myself. 12 grams of olive oil, yum. Okay. And especially for this croissant bread, you don't want to put too much olive oil because it might make the bread a little too oily. It really doesn't, but it gives it just a little bit too much softness if you put too much olive oil in the croissant bread, only because I will be adding butter later. The other thing I add to my sourdough is some honey. And again, the extra virgin olive oil and the honey just really help make it a very nice perfect crumb loaf. So here's my wildflower honey that I get at Costco, and I'm going to add about 12 to 15 grams of this. And I just pour it right out of the bottle. There we go. Now I'll tare, and I'll mix this just a little bit more. And I'm going to add 550 grams of unbleached organic bread flour. Unbleached organic bread flour, 550 grams. If anyone's interested, I'm more than happy to share my recipe. And like I said, you might want to go ahead and get yourself a book if you're starting a sourdough journey, and keep your favorite recipes in it. It works so great, and it's got plastic cover so it doesn't get dirty as you bake. Okay, 550 grams of flour. And although I'm on my quest for the perfect loaf, the loaf that we love the best, I'm very happy to say that in the year and a half that I have been making sourdough, it's coming better and better every time. But my starter is Active Amos, and if anybody ever wants some starter, I have dehydrated some and I'm happy to share with you. It's very inexpensive. You just basically pay for the shipping. So 550 grams of organic unbleached bread flour. I like to use HEB brands. Actually, I live here in Texas in the Austin area, and we have HEB, and I find that's the flour I like the best. King Arthur's also good. This time I'm using a flour from Sprouts, which is supposed to be like a farmer's flour, and I'm fine with it as long as it makes a nice bread and it's organic and unbleached. I'm good. Okay, so we have 550 grams of flour in our bowl. And now the next thing I add, and do not ever forget this, but you have to add salt. If you don't add salt to your bread, it will have absolutely no flavor and will not rise properly. So always always salt. And again, my starter is Active Amos. He is wonderful. I made him myself. When I started this journey, I prepared my own starter, and he is strong and vibrant and muscular. He just raises my bread better than anything I could have possibly had. Okay, let's get some salt. So I take my bowl off my scale, and I'm going to dry my scale because it got a little water on it. And I have this little cup here that I use for my salt because I prefer to weigh my salt separately. Some people say just go ahead and throw it in the bowl, but there's so much in that bowl. I want to weigh it separately and make sure that I get the right amount of grams. This time I'm going to put 12 grams. And sometimes I overdo, like I just did. I have 14 and a half grams in here, and I don't want that much because I'm going to use salted butter. I've tried using salted butter for this particular customer, and she likes it better than the unsalted. So I'm going to take a little bit of the salt out of my little cup and put it in my salt shaker. I use Redmond real salt. It's a little too little now. I promise I'll get it right. Okay, perfect. So now what I'll do is put the salt on the top of the flour. I just kind of sprinkle it around the flour, and then I like to just mix it with the flour a little bit before I start mixing my dough. I'm so glad you're here today. Thanks for coming. And please remember to subscribe, like, and share my videos. I feel so blessed to be able to do this. and I feel even more blessed that you're here with me. My trusty whisk. I like this one. I have another one that's it's got a wooden handle, and the handle attaches to the top, and I just feel like the dough gets stuck in it, so I like this one, and I'll put the link to it in the comments. And again, if there's anything I'm showing you that you'd like to know more about, or find out where to buy it, or exactly what I have, just put the link, just put the question in the comments, and I will go ahead and put the link for you. I'm going to try to link everything I can remember, but sometimes I forget some of the things you might want. So now I'm mixing up my dough, and I mix it with the whisk. It works best and it's easiest. And I get it as well mixed as I can before I start using my hands. And again, this process in a glass bowl is just so much easier than trying to do it in a bowl that you can't see through. And when I first learned, some of the people I followed to learn how to make sourdough used a non-see-through bowl. And once I started, I just was like, how? Why use a non-see-through bowl when you can't see what's happening to your dough? So when I teach it, I always teach a see-through bowl. I'm gonna go get my dough scraper or my jar scraper. One moment. This is another thing that I feel like you should have if you're gonna be a sourdough baker. There are some things you buy because you think you need it when you start. Oh my gosh, I have a whole cabinet full of things that I bought when I started because I thought, I need that. That's what the people say to use. And then I learned I didn't really need that. Whenever you buy bannetons, they come with the cloth liners, and they come with, and then some of the sourdough jars to mix your starter come with cloth tops. Worst thing, I wouldn't use those. They actually can capture bacteria and mold, and they're very high maintenance, whereas the things I have purchased since I started this journey are so much easier. I'm a fan of anything disposable so that I can use new things whenever it's necessary. Okay, when you're doing this, you actually don't need the scale. I keep having a habit of leaving my things on the scale, but you don't really need it. So now I've gotten enough of the mixture mixed with my whisk, and now I've got to get into it with my hands. I use food grade plastic gloves or rubber gloves because I don't like to get the dough in my fingernails, but also most of the breads that I make are for other people, and I'm also a certified food preparer. I've got a food preparer certification, and one of the things that of course they teach is use gloves because we don't want to spread any germs to anyone. So I'm very cautious about using gloves and about keeping my hair covered. Sometimes when I'm getting into things like cookies, I wear a hairnet or my hair back. Okay. Now, another thing I like to do when I am going to use my hands to mix the dough is I spray my gloves with a little bit of olive oil. I find it helps keep the dough from sticking to your gloves. So that's what I'm going to do now. Spraying it with a little bit of olive oil. And if a little bit more olive oil gets into the dough, it's not going to hurt it. It's only going to enhance it. So I'll rub my hands a little bit to make sure that the olive oil got all over the gloves. Put my other glove on. And now we're going to mix with our hands. Oh, this is very satisfying, very therapeutic. Now, I also want you to know that, like I said, sourdough is flexible, sourdough is adaptable, and sourdough is not a perfect science. You don't have to worry about it being exact as much as possible, but a few grams here or there is not going to hurt anything. And sometimes you have to be adaptable and adapt your recipe. This seems to be coming together very well. There's a little bit of flour crusted at the bottom, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. If it had been too much, I would put a little bit more water. If it had been too wet, I would have put a little bit more flour. So as you mix, you can tell what the consistency is, and you'll learn to know whether or not the consistency is what you want, or if you have to add a little bit more flour or water. Now, I do see that there's still some flour at the bottom of my bowl. I'm going to try getting it off with this, but if it doesn't mix into the dough well, then I'll put just a drop more of water. But so far, it seems to be working. I just need to get it off the bottom of the bowl. Now, I like to mix my dough for about 3 minutes. Some people, when I first started, said, oh, just leave a shaggy dough in the bowl. And that's the way I did it. Most people do it that way, or lots of people do it that way. I've learned over the 18 months I've been working on this that you actually should mix it a little bit more than a shaggy dough. So that's what I'm doing now. I hope you can see my dough. It's a nice dough. Look at that. Look at what that Active Amos has done. So I'm going to knead it a little bit in the bowl and pull it and stretch it a little bit just to get it all mixed in well. About done. Almost done. Okay, I think we have a good dough here for our croissant bread. So I will cover it with a plastic shower cap and leave it sit on my table for approximately an hour. And remember, your fermentation starts as soon as the flour, water, and starter are mixed. So let's see, it is 11:37. 11:30 is when I will consider this to have started its fermenting time. I don't go by time. However, in my kitchen, with my temperature at the house being 73, it takes about 6 hours, actually pretty close to 6 hours for me to feel like it is proofed enough. And like I said, I don't go by time, I go by looks, but that's about the time, how long it takes for mine to ferment. So in the meantime, we have to do stretch and folds, and we have to add the butter for the croissant. So I'll be back in about an hour to go to the next step. See you soon. Bye-bye. Okay, I'm back, and an hour has passed, so now I'll do my first set of stretch and folds. Lift, stretch, fold. Go around a quarter of a turn, lift, stretch, fold. Try not to tear. Go around a quarter of a turn, lift, stretch, fold. Can you see how the dough is starting to come together? Quarter of a turn, lift, stretch, fold. Quarter of a turn, lift, stretch, fold. And the dough is developing gluten and coming together nicely. You see that? Lift, stretch, fold. Lift, stretch, fold. I usually go around about twice, a quarter of a turn each time. And like I said, this is just the first of my stretch and folds. Lift, stretch, fold. Okay, so in 30 minutes, I will be back to do another set of stretch and folds. However, I'm not gonna tape that, but in 30 minutes, you want to do a second set of stretch and folds. By the third set, I'll be putting my butter in. If I was doing a different inclusion, I would be starting to put my inclusions in on the second set, but the butter is so fragile. You don't want it to defrost too much. I use frozen butter, which I grate, and if I do it on the second, it's already melting by the third. So I do my inclusion of butter on the third and fourth set of stretch and folds. So now I will cover my bowl again with my disposable shower cap, and I'll leave it sit for 30 more minutes, and then I will do another set of stretch and folds. And I'll be back here for the third set of stretch and folds to add some of my butter inclusion. See you soon. Bye-bye. I'm back again to grate the butter. So I leave my grater attachment in my freezer until it's time to grate so that everything is nice and cold and the butter grates more easily. Here's a frozen stick, 1/4 pound of salted sweet cream butter. And all of my attachments. Great. I use my KitchenAid, which makes it so much easier. Okay, so I'm on my third set of stretch and folds now on my croissant bread. And here's the dough, and it's time to add the frozen butter that I just took out of the freezer. And I froze my attachment, my grater attachment on my KitchenAid and the butter in advance to make sure it was good and frozen for grating. So I take some of the grated butter and I put it in the middle of the dough as I'm doing my stretch and folds. Here comes another one. Stretch, put some of the butter in the middle of it and fold. Turn it again, 1/4 turn. And this time I'm just gonna mix in some of the butter that's already there because some of it didn't get mixed in well. The last one, I will do some coil folds. So I'll have you join me for the fourth set of folds to get the butter incorporated. And the more the butter is dispersed through the bread, the more croissant-like the bread becomes. I have people who will only eat my croissant bread. They don't want any other kind. It's a different, flavorful, flaky, tender crust, tender crumb bread. So again, I put some in the middle, and now I am trying to get it dispersed throughout the bread, and I will probably leave this last part of the butter, the last amount of butter that I have left in my bowl, for the fourth stretch and fold. Or actually, I'm gonna do coil folds on the fourth one. So just a little bit more. I just wanna get it very well into the bread. And I just kind of do it by hand, trying to get it nice and mixed in so that it will be throughout the bread. And I will tell you, I have tried doing these during shaping, and it just did not work as well. So the best time to do it is when you're doing your stretch and folds. I've tried all ways to make it easier on myself, and this is the best way. Whenever I make it this way, my clients or customers tell me they like it the best. So I'm telling you this so you don't waste your time doing it a different way. Okay, So I've got this all folded in pretty darn good. And what I like to do is kind of roll it over so that the seams are at the bottom so they will close as it continues to rise. And then I'll be back in 30 minutes to do some coil folds with the rest of the butter. This will go on my counter or table, and this will go back in the freezer to stay frozen until I use it next. Thanks, see you soon, bye-bye. Okay, for number 4, it'll be coil folds, and then I'll let it rise for a few hours, and I'll be back to shape and leave it in the Banneton overnight. So here, look at the bubbles. Look when I push, the bubbles that are starting to come up. Nice dough. So satisfying. I hope you'll try it someday. Okay, so I just put my butter in the middle for now, and then I am going to fold it over once, and then I'm going to do some coil folds, which is just kind of a roll. At this point, I just kind of pick it up and roll it over. Bubbles. There's a little butter on the side here, so I'll incorporate it. And there's a little more down here that I'll incorporate. Now I'll put some more in the middle here. Then I'm going to fold it over. That, and then I'll coil fold like this. And fold it over. You just want to get that butter incorporated the best way you can. Fold it over. And once the butter starts to melt a little, the dough doesn't stick to itself. So you kind of have to roll it. Some more butter in the middle and roll it over. Like that. And coil fold. Again, we'll put a little bit of butter in the middle here. And then I'll roll it over again. And I'm almost done, look. There's very little butter left. But I do like to get the whole 1/4 pound in, because the more butter, the more flaky and flavorful it is. And the more like a croissant roll. It really is a good bread. I'll have to make one for myself and cut it and show you how beautiful the inside is. I had someone recently who contacted me and asked me to make a croissant bread for them because they recently moved to my area and couldn't find anyone who made croissant bread, and they were really having withdrawals. So she was very happy to have one. Again, this is sourdough croissant bread. Okay, I'm going to roll it over again. All the butter is in it now. There's no more butter left in my bowl. Kind of tucking it in and putting the seam side down so it will close as it grows. And this is the croissant bread dough ready to rise. And I will put my cover on, and it will go to sleep in my microwave while it grows. It's gonna do a bulk ferment in my microwave, and later we'll shape, put it in a Banneton, and it'll go in the refrigerator overnight to get more flavor, and I'll bake it in the morning. So I will see you later when it's time to shape and put in the Banneton. Bye-bye. Hi again, Christine here, and I'm back to shape the risen dough for my croissant bread. It rose beautifully. Look at that nice dough. Just look at that. See the bubbles on the sides? See it? Bubbles on the top. It's looking really, really good. So let's shape this puppy and have it ready to bake tomorrow. My friend who's it's for has said that she doesn't care if I have it ready tonight. She prefers that it stays in a cold proof for better flavor. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna leave it overnight in the fridge and have it nice and tangy for her when I bake it in the morning. Let's turn it out. Oh my goodness, you see how that dough turned out of that bowl? Hardly anything left in it. Some of that has got to do with the fact that there's butter in it, but the rest of it has to do that. It's so perfectly proofed. Now, when I do croissant bread, I want to be very, very gentle. I don't want to over pull it or overwork it because I want it to be a nice rise with and leave the butter in it. I rather the butter does not come out of my croissant bread when I bake it. So I'm very gentle. I can just feel the heat from the butter defrosting and from it being in the microwave, but the microwave wasn't on. It's just that it doesn't get hit by the air conditioner. That's why I put it in the microwave. So what I'm going to do after I stretched it a little bit is I'm going to gently pull it all to the center and make a bowl out of it. Okay? Pretty much kind of like when it was in the bowl. But like I said, I can see the butter and I don't want it to leak out when I bake it. So I'm gently pulling it all to the center, just like this. And I want to give it some tension because that will make it pop more in the oven. So you can see I'm pulling it all to the center as much as possible without ripping it. It's got to be done very gently because if you rip it, it's not going to come near as good. So and you saw I put on a brand new pair of gloves for this because my last gloves got all greasy from the butter and I would not reuse them. Still pulling it in towards the center, as you can see, but trying very hard not to overwork it. Okay, now I'm just gonna roll it all in towards the center and I'm gonna turn it over. And I normally work my dough for my breads much more than this on the shaping, but not croissant bread. Croissant bread has to be very gentle. Add some tension to it. Okay. And now I will spray some water in my Banneton. My Banneton has one of the disposable liners, which, as I said earlier in the video, disposable's my thing. I like being able to just throw things out when they're done being used and not have to worry about washing it and making sure there's no bacteria or mold or anything like that. Okay. I will get my rice flour. This is my handy rice flour dispenser. And I'll sprinkle some rice flour on my moistened Banneton liner. And then I will put my dough in. Gently, upside down, just like this. And it's in its bed for the night. Do some stitching, which is really important on this bread. Very bubbly. Not too bubbly though, where it's overproof, thank goodness. Stitch this baby up. again, with the croissant bread, everything gentle, because if you rip it, that butter's gonna escape during baking. So I wanna be very gentle with it. And leaving it in the refrigerator overnight is gonna make the butter get harder again, or more firm. And then the last thing I do before I bake while I'm preheating my oven is I put it in the freezer just during the preheat, and that really holds the butter in nicely. And so when I bake it, the butter doesn't escape like it might if I don't do those steps. So that's why I really do prefer to cold proof my croissant bread. I like the butter to get firm again, because I get very distressed when I see butter all over my pan. I know it didn't stay in the bread, and I rather it stay in the bread where the people who eat it can enjoy it. Okay, I'm going to put a little bit more stitching here. I'm going to put some of my rice flour on the top to keep it from getting too wet. And actually, I need to put a little bit more flour in this. So I'll do that. Oh, this bag is so hard to open. There we go. There we go, much better. So this is what the top of the bread or the dough looks like before I put it in the fridge. And now I will cover it with the shower cap, and it'll go in the fridge until I'm ready to bake it in the morning sometime. Good night, bread. Good night, folks. See you soon.
Hi, Christine here. Just got back from the gym, and now I'm ready to bake my croissant bread. The oven is preheated to 450. Just took my dough out of the freezer. Got my pan here, and I'm ready to go. So let's do this. Like I said, last night it was in the refrigerator, cold proofing all night. And when I set my oven to preheat, I stuck this in the freezer for a little bit. I find the firmer it is from being nice and cold, the more the butter stays in the bread, and that's exactly what I want. I've made some where the butter has leaked all over the pan and out of the bread, and I just felt like it wasn't good for a croissant bread to not have a lot of butter in it. So this is what I do next. I lay my parchment, and I buy these pre-cut parchment papers on Amazon. I'll put a link in the comments. And I turn it over just like this onto a parchment paper. And you can see the nice lines from the Banneton. I love that. And now I will score with my scoring lame. Sometimes I use the one with the long handle, and sometimes I use the short one. I was in the mood for the short one today. What I try to do with my croissant bread is I go around in kind of like a spiral, because I feel like it makes almost a flour, and it makes it more flaky because it's got more scoring. So this is the way I like to do my croissant breads. Of course, you can do whatever you want. I just find this one works the best for me. So I'm scoring, and I'm scoring not too deep, but I am going through the skin, and I'm trying to do it kind of at an angle because I do feel like that will make more flakes. I usually try to score at an angle. And you'll see the finished result when I'm done, but this is how I almost always make my croissant bread, because I'm happy with the results. I don't go down too low with the scoring because I don't want, again, the butter to come out. So I leave my scoring mostly on the top of the bread. Sometimes it comes out looking like a rose, which I really like. So we'll see if this one does that. And like I said, I just kind of make a spiral all the way around. I hope you can see that. That's my scoring. So now I use 2 sheets of the parchment because, again, if butter spills out, I prefer to go on the parchment versus having a really messy pan. So you can see I've got one this way, kind of vertically, and I'm going to put my bread horizontally in here. There we go. And I will spray the perimeter of my pan with a little water to help with the steam, to help the dough pop nicely. And what I do is for the first 7 minutes of baking, I do not leave a pan underneath. I take the pan out, and then after the 7 minutes, I put the pan back in because we don't want the bottom of the bread to come too dark, and it comes out perfectly that way. So for 7 minutes, there's a pan under the bread, and then for the rest of the bake time, there is no pan. And my breads come out perfect on the bottom, absolutely no burning. So let's put it in the oven now, and then we'll be back again later to show you how it turns out. I think you can see, I use the middle rack. Of course, I have a thermometer there. I will take the pan out for right now. And I'm just using a foil oven liner pan, but it's on the rack right below the bread. Okay. Now I will set the timer to 7 minutes at first, so I'll remember to put my pan back in. So it's set for 7 minutes. In 7 minutes, I will come back, put my pan back in, and then I will set the timer for another 33 minutes. So it'll be in the oven a total of 40 minutes, but after 40 minutes, I'll take the cover off, and if it needs more browning, I'll leave it for a few more minutes. So that's the start of the croissant bread in the oven. I'll be back after 40 minutes and we'll look and see what it looks like then. Okay, see you soon. Bye-bye. Okay, time's up. Let's check out the oven and see what it looks like. Oh yeah, I don't even think I'm gonna have to leave it in any longer. Look at that. Is that a beauty? Look at what a beauty. I'm going to test it with the temperature. Going to use the thermometer to see what temperature we're at to make sure it's cooked enough, and then I'll probably take it out. I think it's okay, but because I had it out of the oven a little bit, it may just need a few more minutes on the temperature. It was at 206, so let's see. I'm gonna slide it back in just for a couple more minutes. And we'll see what we got. I'm gonna lower the temperature to 4 1/4. And I'm gonna set the timer to 3 minutes. I don't want it to get burnt. I'm just gonna actually give it about a minute, and then I'll test the temperature again now that it's in the oven. Let's see. Yeah, I think it's good. It's at 208. Look at that beauty. Is that not a beautiful loaf? Now let's see what it looks like when we take it out of the pan. Look at the under part, perfect. And there it is, a perfect croissant loaf. Ta-da!